Welcome back to the channel. It's Black Friday.
Yeah.
And while everyone's out there, grabbing all the deals,
hmm
we're going to take a look at what's happening in the markets.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in the Black Friday frenzy, but we're really focusing on what investor sentiment is and how that's...
Right. And speaking of sentiment,
Yeah.
there's this kind of like cautious optimism
Yeah.
in the air, even with
Right.
mixed signals from around the world.
Yeah. And here in the U.S., we are seeing some positive momentum, with stock futures for major indices like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ trending up in pre-market trading.
So this optimism, it seems like it's fueled by a few key factors.
Yeah.
First, Black Friday sales
Uh-huh.
are looking pretty strong.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign for retail.
Yeah, and I think even more importantly, concerns about U.S. restrictions on sales to China seem to be easing.
Okay.
And this is giving a boost to tech companies like NVIDIA and Applied Materials, which are already seeing gains in pre-market trading.
So even with this positive news, right, we have to remember that the global market picture is a little more complex.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
For example,
yeah.
over in Asia, we saw mixed results.
Yeah, Japan's Nikkei index dipped a little bit because there are concerns about potential interest rate hikes by the Bank of Japan.
Oh?
But Chinese stocks actually surged.
Really?
Thanks to a strong performance in their retail sector.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then how about Europe?
So Europe, the markets are kind of holding their breath, waiting for key inflation data that could influence the European Central Bank's next moves.
It's a good reminder that, the global economy is all interconnected, and what happens in one part of the world
Absolutely.
can really ripple out and affect markets everywhere.
Yep.
So speaking of interconnectedness,
Yeah.
the weakening U.S. dollar
Uh-huh.
is another factor that's impacting investor sentiment.
Oh, absolutely. A weaker dollar can be good and bad.
Right.
For multinational companies, it makes their exports more competitive, but it can also make imported goods more expensive.
Yeah.
Which could fuel inflation.
Yeah, it's a complex dynamic,
It is.
and it's something that investors are definitely watching.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so another interesting development is in the bond market.
Okay.
The yield on the 10-year Treasury note has dropped to a one-year low.
Wow.
And this signals that investors are seeking the relative safety of government bonds.
Yeah, I think this could be due to a number of factors, including concerns about potential economic slowdowns.
Yeah.
Or even just, a flight to safety amidst global uncertainties.
Right. And then we have gold,
Uh-huh.
which is a traditional safe haven asset.
Yeah.
It's down 3% this month,
Wow.
which is its biggest slump in over a year.
Okay.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it could be partly due to the weakening dollar, but it also suggests that investors may not be as worried about major economic turmoil as they were previously.
So it's really interesting how all these pieces of the market puzzle fit together.
Yeah.
And, as we head into December, there's another factor that I think could influence sentiment, and that's the Santa Claus rally.
Yes. Historically, the stock market tends to do pretty well in late December and early January.
Right.
And this year could be no different, although we always have to remember that, past performance
Of course.
doesn't guarantee future results.
Exactly. And speaking of past performance,
Yeah.
one company that's been making headlines
Uh-huh.
is Tesla.
Oh, yeah. The electric vehicle.
Right.
People seem to either love them or hate them,
Right.
and analyst opinions are all over the map,
Right.
with price targets ranging from a shockingly low $24.86 to a whopping $400.
Wow. That is quite a range.
It is.
It really highlights the uncertainty surrounding Tesla's future.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that even in a market that's showing signs of optimism,
Right.
individual companies can face unique challenges and opportunities.
For sure. So let's bring this back to you, the listener.
Okay.
Why should you care about all of this?
Well, understanding investor sentiment can help you make more informed decisions about your own investments.
Exactly. If you're feeling bullish about the market,
Yeah.
you might consider increasing your exposure to stocks,
Okay.
particularly in sectors that are showing strong momentum like technology.
But on the other hand, if you're feeling more cautious,
Right.
you might want to think about diversifying your portfolio,
Yeah.
maybe by increasing your allocation to bonds or other less volatile assets.
Exactly. Remember, the key is to make decisions that align with your own investment goals,
Right.
your risk tolerance,
Ah,
and your time horizon.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
staying informed about market trends and investor sentiment
Mm-hmm.
is a crucial part of that process.
It is now, even though there's this cautious optimism in the air, it's important to remember that the market can be unpredictable.
Yeah,
There are always risks to consider,
for sure.
and unexpected events can quickly shift sentiment.
Right. And that's why it's so important to do your research,
Uh-huh.
stay diversified,
Yeah.
and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Yeah, it's exactly great advice.
Let's take a closer look at some of the indicators
Okay,
that are shaping investor sentiment.
sure.
One that we're really keeping a close eye on is the yield curve.
Yeah.
It's basically a graph that plots the yields of bonds with different maturities.
Right now, the yield curve is pretty flat, meaning there's not a big difference in yields
Yeah.
between short-term and long-term bonds.
And this can sometimes be a sign that investors are a little bit concerned about future economic growth.
Yeah, a flat yield curve can sometimes be like a warning sign
Okay.
that a recession might be coming.
Got it.
So it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on.
Yeah. And another important factor
Yeah.
to consider
Hmm.
is the price of oil.
Of course, WTI crude oil is currently trading at around $68 a barrel, and Brent crude is at around $72 a barrel.
So those prices are a bit down from their recent highs,
Yeah.
but they're still pretty high
Right.
compared to historical levels.
And this, of course, has implications for inflation because when oil prices are higher,
Yeah.
things tend to get more expensive across the board.
It also impacts all sorts of industries,
Absolutely.
like transportation and manufacturing.
For sure.
So we talked about how concerns about chip sales to China are kind of easing.
Right.
And that's given a boost to companies like NVIDIA and Applied Materials.
Hmm.
But how is this impacting the U.S. market as a whole?
Well, the tech sector is such a major driver of economic growth
Yeah.
that its performance can really affect overall market sentiment.
And, with that potential Santa Claus rally coming up,
Yeah.
we could see tech stocks and the broader market get another boost in the next few weeks.
Maybe so.
Now we've got to talk about Supermicrocomputer.
Oh, yeah.
Their pre-market gains are really interesting, especially considering they've had some volatility recently.
Hmm.
And there was even that potential delisting threat from
Right.
NASDAQ.
Yeah. It's a bit of a comeback story.
It is, isn't it?
We'll have to see how it plays out.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from global trends to what's happening with individual companies.
Yeah, but remember, the market is constantly changing.
Absolutely.
You never know what's going to happen next.
So what should investors keep in mind?
Well, staying informed is key.
Okay.
Do your research
Mhm.
and make sure your investment decisions are right for you.
And that's really great advice.
Thanks.
It's like we're sailing in calm waters right now, but
Yeah.
we always have to be ready for those unexpected storms.
Exactly. Like, even though global supply chains have been pretty stable lately, there could be disruptions, and that can have a big impact on businesses and the economy as a whole.
Right. And then there's always the possibility of geopolitical tensions or political instability, that could really shake things up.
Oh, yeah. Those are definitely wild cards that can create a lot of volatility and uncertainty in the markets.
Yeah. So it's super important to stay informed and be adaptable,
Yeah,
ready to adjust your investment strategy as needed.
absolutely.
Okay. So we've talked about a lot of different factors influencing investor sentiment, but let's circle back to Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those analyst price targets we talked about earlier were all over the place.
Right.
It really shows how much debate there is about Tesla's future.
Some analysts are so bullish on Tesla.
Yeah.
They see huge growth potential in the EV market, and they think Tesla's in the perfect position to capitalize on that.
But then you have other analysts who are much more skeptical.
Yeah, they point to things like increased competition and concerns about whether Tesla can actually produce enough cars to meet demand.
So it's a really interesting example of how different people can have such different expectations and how that can affect a company's valuation.
It really is. So how should investors approach this?
Well, like always, it comes down to doing your research, understanding the company and the industry, and making sure that any investment decisions you make
Right.
align with your own personal goals and risk tolerance.
Exactly. There's
Yeah.
no magic formula or one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to investing in individual companies.
And at the end of the day, the market is really just a reflection of what everyone thinks.
Yeah, all those different viewpoints and expectations coming together.
So it's up to each investor to weigh the information,
Mm-hmm.
look at the risks and the potential rewards, and make decisions that they feel good about.
I think that's a great point. So as we wrap up this conversation about investor sentiment and market trends, I think the biggest takeaway is that you should never stop learning.
Right, the market is always changing.
Always.
So you have to stay informed and be willing to adapt and be open to new ideas.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah,
Look for different perspectives and just keep learning and growing as an investor.
and we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
What are your market predictions?
Hmm.
Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below.
We always love hearing from our listeners.
So please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content.
And we'll be back soon with more insights into the world of finance.